The following documentary details real sightings of real Sasquatch by real people. Their experiences fantastical, their effects long-lasting and life-altering. Who or what revealed itself to these genuine souls? And why? Perhaps there's more than meets the eye.
It was a bluebird January morning here in the foothills of northeast Provo when a group of guys saw a figure on the mountain that looked like something they've never seen before.
I think it looks so real. When I first saw it, I was like, oh my goodness, it's Bigfoot.
This was shot apparently near the Intracoastal Waterway earlier this month. Randy O'Neill says he captured the images with his cell phone while he was camping with his dad. He says he saw red eyes watching them from the woods.
You know, I've killed deer here, bear here. You know, I know the difference between fox and coon. And you know from being in the woods, when you hear something, you know what, you got a good idea, a good sense about what's in the woods. You know, and this, I never heard this, and it's all bamboo here. And anybody that's out by the river, comes through the woods, you can hear a squirrel coming through the woods, and we couldn't hear this. You know, like I said, we woke up, she heard metal. There was ramps up by the railroad tracks for the guys to get their quads over. If not, they get hung up. And she said, I heard metal, so I think it stepped on it. And I just came out, turned the lantern on, and looked up, and then there the eyes were. And honest to God, for like 3 hours, it stood there, and it would just walk back and forth, and that's it. And I always said, you know, if I saw a Bigfoot, or I was gonna run right at it, or, you know, listen, I wasn't running nowhere. And I'm not scared of any man or anything in these woods, and I was shook. It was amazing, amazing.
I think my first experience that I had was one time, probably 15 years ago, when I was recovering from surgery, and I was up late at night watching a movie, and I went out on my back deck for a few minutes, and I heard a scream or a howl, and it sounded exactly like a sound clip known as the Ohio howl. And it just caught my attention. It was like 2, 3 in the morning, and nobody was up or in the house or moving around, and I just stood there dumbfounded listening to that sound. But that was the only experience I had at that time. A few months later, I was taking care of my mother, who was very elderly, and she lived in a separate house from mine about 40 yards away from my house, and there was a grove of pine trees between her house and mine. And I went from her house to my house to go to bed because I worked night shift as a RN. And I noticed a horrible smell. It was smelled like somewhat like a wet dog. And I remembered reading that a lot of times the Bigfoot has an odor to him. And I really didn't think much about it. I just noticed it when I walked over to my house, and I went to bed to get some sleep before going into work. And I don't know how much later my son came into the bedroom and said, "Dad, something was in the backyard." And he said I could hear it running and breathing and through the backyard down into the woods, and I could hear branches snapping as it went through down in the woods about 100 yards behind our house. And immediately I got up and got dressed with him and went out into the backyard with my son, but we didn't see anything. We probably sat out an hour or so, and then I had to go in and get dressed for work. But those incidents occurred around my house in rural West Virginia.
I actually had my first interaction with Bigfoot when I was 13 years old. This was back in 1978. I and a couple of buddies went deer hunting here in the Jemez Mountains of New Mexico. And in New Mexico, when you hunt with muzzleloader, the mule deer season is late September, so the weather's still real beautiful then. There's no snow, the mountains are still real green. But we had been hunting for probably about 3 days, me and two of my buddies, and we hadn't seen anything. We hadn't had any luck. So like on the fourth day, we decided to split up. So my buddies went their way, I went mine. I hiked to the top of this flat top mesa up in the Jemez Mountains, and I was sitting up there by myself for about 20 minutes when I actually seen something move, but it was like about 700-800 yards away. At first I thought it was a black bear laying on top of this rock. I was so far away I couldn't tell how big the rock was on it. It turned out later on that the rock actually was probably about the size of a pickup truck. Anyway, so I'm sitting there, and I thought it was a black bear because the only thing was it was laying on its back. And if you know anything about black bears, they normally lay on their side or they lay on their belly. But I thought, well, he was probably enjoying the sun. It was a nice day. After about 40 minutes, I was totally mesmerized on this thing. I couldn't take my eyes off it. Well, one of my other buddies, he knew where I was going to be, so he thought he would sneak up on me. He said when he saw me, he thought I was asleep because he came up from behind. And he said I wasn't even moving. So right when he gets to me, he goes, "Hey!" So I jumped a little bit. Well, when I did that, whatever it was that was laying on that rock, it rolled off the rock right away. So I tell my buddy, I go, "Did you see that over there?" And he's like, "What?" I go, "Over there where that rock is about 800 yards away, it was this nice flat rock, and it was surrounded by shrub oak." And just when I said that, whatever that thing was, it stood up, and it was probably about 2 feet taller than the rock was. And it stood up for 1 second, looked, and then it ducked back down, and that was it. We didn't see it again. So we ended up hiking down there to where that rock was. When I got closer to the rock, then I realized how big it was, because from 700-800 yards away, you can't tell really. It turned out that it was a pretty big rock, and it was probably stood about maybe 5-6 feet off the ground. And when this thing stood up, it was at least 2 or 3 feet taller than that. So for some reason, I had never felt like I felt when I saw that thing, whatever it was. I couldn't take my eyes off it.
For when you stare long enough into the abyss stares back.
My name is Sue Walker, and I was introduced to the topic of the behind-the-scenes information about the Sasquatch that not very many people knew, because we have a connection with a star nation here on Earth known as the Pontee, and they began sharing with us that there was an overlap between star nations and UFOs and the Sasquatch that we had no knowledge about. When I was growing up, I knew about Sasquatch, and was not very well read, and it had one encounter when I was in my 20s. I was on a camping trip and woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning to a very strange smell outside the tent and walking footsteps. And we were in a creek by the Mississippi River in the middle of nowhere. And there was no path up to it and no path away from it. And when we got introduced to the idea of the Sasquatch being connected with star nations, I got real confused, and because we had been discussing things with our extraterrestrial Ponte friends for more than a year at that point in time, I asked them directly, and they said that the two nations, the Sasquatch here on Earth and the star nation, people known as the Ponte, had been friends for millions of years. I said, "You've been on Earth that long?" And they said, "Well, the Sasquatch have been here since the beginning of the age of large mammals, but that the friendship between the two of them was both here on Earth when the Ponte came here to explore, but also there are some Sasquatch nations that now travel with star nations to other worlds." And I said, "They do?" And the Ponte told us, yes, theirs is a body type that is extremely durable in a variety of conditions. And they're big, strong, powerful people.
Well, it looks like a game trail up here in the top of the ridge there, so we're going to head up to the top of the ridge and see what it looks like. And we'll set these glow sticks up and then figure somewhere to put the ball down at. That way they can see it. And hopefully we can see it from this point. So, ready?
Yeah.
Well, my name's Eric. I got into Sasquatch a few years back, seeing it on TV. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, looked it up on the internet, and I kept hearing people talk about can't sit behind a computer to find out about these things. So we decided to take a trip, went camping, met a bunch of people, heard a whole lot of stories, seen some photos, and there's definitely something out here. Nobody can explain it, there's no experts on it, but eventually somebody's gonna put it out there. I seen a post on Facebook about somebody shooting a documentary about Sasquatch, and they were camping out. So I figured it was another opportunity to get in the woods and somewhere else and see if you heard anything, saw anything. So we stayed up late last night listening. I listened with game ears for hours, thermal, walked down the road, looked for tracks. We set up a couple of things in the woods just to see if we see movement. And this place is quiet. There's no animals around for some reason. We seen one hunter all day yesterday, 2 cars all day. So there's a reason this place is quiet, but nobody knows yet.
Back to right again a little bit. Stop.
It was like a big black square, wasn't it?
Yeah, where'd it go?
I'm trying to switch this and see if we see anything. Been coming here about 35 years, I guess. I'm 47, so I grew up on this mountain. Had numerous experiences here. We always hear it comes off the side hill behind us. And if you look up the river here, where it bends, it gets real shallow. You can walk across. Done some tree knocks, some calls. We only got one vocalization. We've had rocks thrown at us. from my experience, it's just very inquisitive. It'll come up behind us. The best experience we had, it stood back up by the railroad tracks, so I'm gonna say about 40 yards away, about 3 in the morning, and it just stood up there for about 3 hours. Its eyes, if you can imagine, about this big, about that far apart, but you could actually see the eyelashes when it would blink. You know, this mountain behind us, it's pretty much straight up and down. You know, and I'm not saying the deer don't come down, but it's not gonna be heavily used by bear or deer. I know some of you might think, well, why not? It's the, you know, it's the woods, there's trails. But if you look close, that's almost straight up and down. You know, for something to walk that or to come down that, a human being would roll down that thing. You know, you're not walking down that. And this thing just goes right across. You can hear it. It's like a truck going through the woods. And you'll hear it come down, hit the water. You'll hear splash, splash, splash. And then it comes up behind us. And it's done this, honestly, I'm gonna say 10 to 15 times throughout my 30-some years of being here.
Another incident I had in the same area was I was hunting. I did a lot of deer hunting, and I went deer hunting down along a river called the Gauley River. It's Gauley River Gorge. And I remember going, it was in the fall, late fall, and I was deer hunting, and I went down into the gorge, and I looked along the riverbank, and there were these human-looking footprints in the sand. Somebody was walking there with bare feet. And I could never figure out why somebody would be down in that area and being barefoot in the middle of the winter. And it just never made sense to me who would be down 2-3 miles from the nearest house or farm walking down there barefoot in the middle of the winter. It was on the edge of the river, so if the river came up, it would wipe the tracks out. And they were fairly fresh.
They also have a sense of humor. And we didn't find out about that sense of humor until we attended a conference. The Pontee let us know that the Sasquatch also were a telepathic nation. And we knew that many of the Star Nations were, but we had no idea that the Sasquatch were also. And they indicated to us that they were actually a very advanced race. And I said, advanced how? We don't see signs of that advancement. What do you mean? And they said, well, when a people, a sentient nation on any world, takes care of its own people with food, clothing, if it's necessary, shelter, and water, and medicine, then that nation is considered at the very beginning of the advanced civilization levels that they measure all sentient nations by. The Sasquatch did take care of their people, 100% of their people, with food, medicine, shelter, water. We as Earth humans did not. And so the Pontee let us know that the Sasquatch were actually at a more advanced civilization level than we are. They just prefer to keep life very simple.
46% of the world is covered in wilderness, yet occupied by only 2.4% of the population. In these remote regions, thousands of sightings for thousands of years have occurred. The names vary from Bigfoot to Yeti to Sasquatch, yet their descriptions are uniform. Large, hairy, human-like cryptid creatures live alongside us. Who are they? Why are they here? What is their purpose? And when will we finally uncover the secrets of the Sasquatch?
Well, when I told my wife I was coming out here, she knew I didn't like people much. And she thought I was nuts for coming out here with people that I didn't know. But to find out about the subject, you have to get into the woods, look around, try different things, and hopefully something happens. And it doesn't happen every time, but you get lucky sometimes. It looks like it's getting thick up here. Let's see if we can find a trail that cuts through there. This is the bottom of that tree. This tree was put here. There's nothing there that it came from. This is the bottom of that tree. This one was wedged down in between these two.
Do you think something put that there?
It looked, something had to bring this tree and place it in here. That's the one that looks the weirdest. There's no roots. It's definitely spooky in here, huh?
I'll let you take the lead. You know more what you're looking for here.
We also found some stick formations in the woods in 2 or 3 places that looked like they were constructed. And I saw one place where a tree, the leaves and the branches were woven together in an unusual way. And that was another experience I had. But all of it, those experiences really don't make logical sense to me other than something has made those.
Kind of stumbled onto the path of Sasquatch unknowingly out hiking with my daughter and doing some crayfishing, walking in the woods by the creek, and stopped for, you know, a little break, a little snack, a little drink, and lo and behold, right the rock we were standing on, sitting on, snacking, there's this imprint in the rock. It's a foot. I snapped a picture. I put my sneaker, my left foot, the same foot that apparently the creature or Sasquatch, I have a feeling it was a Bigfoot. Took a picture of my shoe beside the imprint in the rock, which was lucky to find because the water levels were down low. It was dry. The water wasn't flowing through the stream, therefore I could see it. Just right there in the ground on a stone right beside the creek.
We learned that the Sasquatch are considered the stewards of Earth's forests. They've been taking care of the woodlands all over this world, on every continent for, well, millions of years now. And that they have artwork, they have a language that they put in stick glyphs in the ground and leave messages for one another. They all have names, they all have families. They have a language that oftentimes will borrow words from whatever the local native culture or language around their area is. So here in New Mexico, you might hear smatterings of Spanish words or Pueblo Native American words in with their language. If you're up in, say, Canada and Quebec, you might hear French words. They also would adopt and borrow, at times, some of our names to name their own children.
How awesome it must be to be a creature and to live that way. I mean, what more could you ask for? Living, you know, with your significant other, raising your kids in the mountains the way they do, doing what they do. That's got to be, I mean, that's what every man wants, just to raise a family, to be able to support his family, take care of them. And that's what the Sasquatch do. That's what they do. They live in clans.
You know, we have fossils of Gigantopithecus, you know, he lived before the Ice Age. So it's very, I mean, it was there before, you know, so is it possible it survived through the Ice Age? Sure, why not? Back over about a mile that way, a guy grows vegetables every year and pumpkins, and there's an abandoned asphalt plant. So the food source here is very abundant for a creature of that size, you know, to be able to sustain itself, you know. In a mile radius, I think there's 2 houses, and besides that, there's really nothing here, so nobody bothers it. Like I said, I've been camping here for 30-some years, and I don't know anybody else that comes down here and camps. You know, they ride quads and they go home. So I think curiosity has a lot to do with it. He was just curious, and he came down, and when I'm here, for some reason he comes. But there was a very strange feeling. It was almost like I was seeing, like I forgot what was around me when he was standing there. It was just like I was focused on them. It was almost like a moment in time. It was very strange.
I did a lot of trout fishing in West Virginia, and one of the areas I would trout fish was in an area probably 20 miles northeast of Richwood, West Virginia, which is national forest. And I had remembered reading an account of a Bigfoot sighting in that area. And somehow during the day when I was fishing, I got my wallet out and was changing out hooks on my tackle, and I lost my wallet. I didn't realize I lost it till I got home that evening, and I lived 40 miles away from that area, so I ended up going back because I said I can't really function without knowing where my wallet is, and I went 1.5 miles, 2 miles down the trail, down a mountainside from the parking area where I parked. And I eventually located the wallet. And it was like 2, 3 in the morning on my way back, and I was a little spooked because it was very quiet. There wasn't another person around for miles. And I had a big walking stick with me, and I decided, I don't know what possessed me, but I decided I was going to hit a tree and see if I got a response. So I took my walking stick and smacked the side of a tree, and immediately within maybe 1 or 2 seconds of when I did that, right across the hillside from where I was on, I heard another knock. I mean, it startled me, it was so close. And at that point, I pretty much picked up my stuff and got back up the mountain in my car and left, because I did not want to be in the woods alone by myself at 2, 3 in the morning to confront something that I really wasn't sure what it was.
Well, we set up the cans over there. We set up the glow sticks hanging from the line here. We put the ball down, and we have the glow-in-the-dark bracelet. So we're going to head back now and see what happens.
Get my toes warm.
Hopefully something comes up. We got the thermal out. Desiree's going to watch on the phone as we take a walk, and we're going to go in there with good thoughts. Like if my motion of me bouncing, walking versus standing still, if something's going to move while I'm holding the camera still, we're going to see it. Whether it's a deer or whatever.
That something could be standing behind that bush,
yeah.
and we don't even know.
Or looking out over the top of it.
Right, that's about 8 feet. It's like there's bigger and older trees down this way a little bit.
See all the trees going to the left? All the small trees?
Oh yeah. This one, including this one up here, and then
Everything's pushed to the left.
almost like an arm is just pushing them off to the side to make room.
I'm down to 1 bar on the thermal, so you want to go ahead and head back?
Yeah, sounds good.
Hopefully there'll be some tracks in this wet stuff tomorrow morning. So if something with no shoes walks out here, you're gonna see it. Look, there's your footprints.
What, these ones?
Yep.
Like moths to a flame, humanity is drawn to the wonders and mysteries of our universe, with an insatiable curiosity to explain the unexplainable. The road to discovery is paved with the passion and bravery of those who dare to step off the path in search of new perspectives. Have our minds become caged into operating within societal norms? Long lost the inspiring words of parents and teachers to push and press and think for ourselves, to dream big. Was not the thought of flying machines and iPhones once fanciful science fiction relegated to those with tinfoil hats? Now we know better, and in 100 years' time, we will only know more.
And we finally got corroboration from the Sasquatch researchers out in the field as to some of the things our ET friends had been telling us. And one of the things that the Pontee had described was that the Sasquatch were what they called transdimensional. And I said, you got to tell me what you mean by that. And they said, well, just like some species occupy a physical niche that straddles two environments, like a forest or a beach or a forest or a creek, there are species out there that occupy a transdimensional physical niche. And it's natural and normal for them to be able to go from one dimension into another. Well, when that happens, it looks like they take a step and vanish and go invisible because they're stepping across the barrier. And I sat back and I didn't know what to do with that piece of information until we spoke with some of the Sasquatch researchers out in the field who had photographs of Sasquatch partially visible and partially not visible, where you could see straight through the body of the Sasquatch.
I knew from my experience with Bigfoot that they live in, well, the ones that I know, they live in cave systems. But you got to ask yourself, how do these things exist? You know, such a large animal, that male that I seen the first time, I don't even know if it was a male because I was so far away, but all I know is he was at least 8 feet tall. And he was pretty wide because when we ended up getting down to that rock, where you could tell that was one of his spots because there was a clear trail right to that rock. And I mean, this trail was about 5-6 feet wide, and you could tell, he was just mowing trees down because it was in some shrub oak, so he was big. But a lot of people, when they go out there to do Bigfoot research or whatever, if you'll notice, a lot of the videos you see, they film these little piles of sand or whatever, dirt all over everywhere where they think the Bigfoot are. And, people say, well, no, those are moles or those are rabbit holes or whatever the case may be. But no, that's not what they are. They do that. They dig these, they have these tunnel systems underground. And, as the clan gets bigger and they start to expand, they need more territory, they have to obviously dig more holes. So they got to get rid of the sand somewhere or the dirt somewhere, and that's how they do it.
Looking back in old Indian lore, and that a lot of the tribes had experiences with these animals, and so it's interesting that historically these sightings go back many, many years. I also had a acquaintance with a Cheyenne Indian woman that worked with me at a university that I got a master's degree at, and she had a lot of questions about Bigfoot, and I gathered from her that their belief is that Bigfoot is another form of a human being, that they were actually another tribe that existed in their area.
And like I say, one day I was there and I was just sitting there filming, and this guy walked up on me. He was a Native American. Well, it turns out that his grandfather was like the chief of the Jemez Pueblo Indians or whatever. And they have known about this clan of Bigfoot up there probably for the last 200 years. Those tunnels, the Gilman tunnels, they were originally constructed in the early 1900s, and they used them they used to do a lot of logging up there, and that's how they would transport the logs out of the mountains was by train. And they had to build these tunnels, and if you've ever been to the Gilman tunnels, you'll see what I'm talking about, because it's a very, very hard place. Like, let's put it this way: if they would have never built those tunnels, we would have never known that this clan of Sasquatch existed, because you got the river that cuts through this pass or whatever. It's very narrow, and there's big old high walls like on both sides, like 200-foot cliffs, and they seem like they go straight up. And he told me the story. What happened was it had flooded so bad up there that the river got dammed up with debris, and the water came up so much that it destroyed the train tracks, and the railroad decided that it was going to be too much rather than to fix the train tracks. They just decided to pull them, and they pulled out, and they stopped logging in the mountains altogether. Well, what his grandfather told him was that the Bigfoot clan that lives there, because this particular clan of Bigfoot up there in that area, that mountain, it has caves all over it. It's a big cave system, and water runs through it. Anyway, he said that they dammed up that river, the Bigfoot did, purposely to flood that canyon, so they would have to pull the tracks, because they weren't comfortable with those trains going through there.
We found out that the structures that the Sasquatch create all start with what they call a trident tree. And sometimes it's a growing tree that's split into 3 forks at the top. So it forms like a Neptune's trident. And they will lean very tall logs up against this initial trident. But the funny thing is, every single other log that they place in the forest is connected to that log, and then to that log, and then to that log. And you can come across a place where they have built structures that are acres and huge, involving huge 200-foot trees or poles that they've stripped the branches of, marking huge X's in the ground and marking the edge of their territory, or creating areas where it prevents the erosion and the runoff going down the hill, or building structures for the smaller guys that reside in the forest with them. There are beings in the forest that aren't any taller than a couple of feet maybe, that look for all the world like a small Sasquatch. And we refer to these little guys as woodmen. That's the name that Sasquatch word translates to. And it basically means forest family. So the other forest family are known to them as the woodmen, and we just adopted that word.
Many of the people I hunted with had experiences of seeing a Bigfoot-like creature on those expeditions. I remember listening to their radio talk, because we all had radios tuned to the same frequency. And I remember them talking where two Bigfoot approached them when they were sitting around a fire in a rather remote part of the forest in North Carolina. And two of the children that were there around the fire were very fearful of these two animals that allegedly walked up to them. And the next morning, they and their father left the expedition. They just packed up and moved right out because they were so intimidated. Had some experiences. One of the ones I had was when I played Bigfoot sounds to my son, because he played a lot in the woods, and my son was probably 18 or 19 at the time. And we were going to go on an expedition, and he was skeptical too, until I played a recording of Bigfoot chatter, so to speak, and his face lit up. I mean, he just was amazed when he heard that. He said, "That's exactly the sound I've heard behind our house down in the woods." And his expression, he couldn't fake it. It was just amazement that it was the same type of sound he was hearing behind our house.
It is often said, seeing is believing. Yet how many whales, bears, and bobcats have you seen swimming in the sea or foraging through the forest? Has our experience not shown our world is filled with bacteria, bugs, birds, and beasts more than capable of remaining just beyond our senses? Undetected, yet ever present. Watching. Waiting. Influencing and affecting our trajectories. Gentle nudges from gentle creatures helping mankind on their journey through time.
My name is Tom Carey. I am a degreed physical anthropologist studying early hominid evolution of the human family. And I became interested in Sasquatch, or Bigfoot as it's commonly called, back in 1967 when I saw that Patterson-Gimlin film taken in Red Bluff, California, of an apparent Bigfoot walking along in the forest of upper California, Northern California. So I wondered what that was, and that was before I even got my anthropology degrees. So, but I've off and on over the years, I've read things about Bigfoot, and certainly Bigfoot, Sasquatch has become very popular on cable TV. My own thought on the subject: number one, a lot of the witness testimony, I go back to witness testimony, to me looks believable. To me, it doesn't look like most of these people are making the stories up, and you can tell from their emotion that they experienced something. Now, as to what Bigfoot might be, I'm thinking of Bigfoot as a relic hominid. So what's a hominid? A hominid is a bipedal primate, habitually bipedal primate. I'm not talking about something like was in the Clint Eastwood movie, Every Which Way But Loose, where they had an orangutan trying to walk bipedally. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not natural. I'm talking about a habitual, natural bipedal primate. Now, from my studies, the hominid or human family split with our closest living relative, the chimpanzee, approximately 6.7 years ago. And 6.7 million, I hope I said a million years ago. And there were several hominid species that became extinct, like Neanderthals and Australopithecines. These are all human relatives. And what I believe Bigfoot represents to me is a relic hominid, one that survived living in the forested areas of the earth. This would cover all continents, North America, South America, you name it. They have Yeti or Bigfoot sightings. And the relic hominid that I have narrowed it down to is a creature called Meganthropus paleojavanicus. It's a relic hominid. It was measured at 7 to 9 feet tall. Most of your Sasquatches are in that range, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 feet tall. So we're not talking about a little fella.
All of these are part and parcel of things that we are just now learning to pay attention to and to research more about the variety of that Sasquatch clans all over the planet. There are the rounder-headed Sasquatch as well as the more conical-headed Sasquatch, kind of like our great apes have a conical head. We see Sasquatch or hear from researchers about Sasquatch that are all white when they get old, but we also hear about them, especially the old males, being silverbacks. So there's a lot of overlap between the great ape species that we know here as well as the Sasquatch peoples.
The way that they work is there will be one alpha male in each clan. And a clan could be up to 30 or 40 members or whatever. Find a place away from people that's hard to get to. Once they find a place that they feel suitable, they start making caverns and they move into them, and then they cover them with brush, stuff like that. They just have holes and stuff to get in and out of. And they'll stay in those areas for, depending on what time of the year it is. And then about 3-4 months later, or if people start to come by, start encroaching on them, they'll move. The alpha males are call all the shots. That they get to breed with the females at will, whichever ones they want, whatever the case may be. And that as they get older, the younger ones, just like the lions, I guess, in Africa, the younger ones will come in, and eventually they battle it out, I guess. And then the alpha male, if he loses, he will move by himself, and then the clan will stay with the other one that won, and they'll start following him. And that's probably what a lot of people see when they see a lone Bigfoot out there, in the middle of nowhere. It was probably an alpha male that was unseated by a younger one. And that's what I'm seeing over there up in the Gilman Tunnels, the Amos Mountains.
I always say that between Randy and my son, that they both go up to the plant. They must have done something to Bigfoot's family up there or something, maybe Bigfoot's son or daughter. But my son, he sleeps at night in that house up there near the sand plant, and all night long something's throwing stones at his window, and he hears it. He actually thought I was doing it, and he keeps talking about that. Right now he's 40, but anyway, the two of them seem to be haunted by Bigfoot. And there's all kind of things there in the dark. You hear all kind of noises. You're in the country. So what it is, don't know.
We found out by happen chance how much the Sasquatch understand local flora, fauna, but also the herbal and medicinal uses of plants. And we found out quite by accident. I happened to be up in Estes Park, Colorado, speaking at a conference, and at this same conference, the Sasquatch researcher Kawani Lapsaritis was also doing a presentation. And we sat in on his presentation, and he informed this audience of about 300 people that Sasquatch was telepathic, and we already had known that because our extraterrestrial friends had let us know. And he ends his presentation, and Otter and I have a room on the second floor with a balcony that overlooks the mountain. And it's getting on towards supper time, and I wanted to step out onto the balcony for a breath of fresh air before supper. And I stood out there just kind of scoping across the landscape where the sun was setting. And I thought, boy, this is marvelous territory for Sasquatch. There's water, there's food, there's shelter-making materials here. And I addressed the forest, and I just sent out this telepathic apology. And it went something like, "Hi, my name is Sue, and I learned to speak with you telepathically with our extraterrestrial friends. But I wanted to let you know that a friend of ours has just finished telling a whole group of Earth humans that you're telepathic. And so if you hear any strange attempts to contact you that way, or loud or inappropriate voices, I apologize in advance for them. They're trying." Well, I didn't expect any kind of a response. And just then, Otter, who was in the room, yells out through the open door to me on the balcony, and he said, "Hey, Sue, have you had your seaweed yet?" Well, I eat snacking seaweed for the iodine for my thyroid. And I'm just about to answer him, and suddenly I hear this quiet female voice telepathically, and it's coming from the forest, not 300 yards from where I am. And I hear, "What's seaweed?" And I recognize that this is a response to my apology out to the Sasquatch. And I don't miss a beat, and I turn back toward the forest, and I talk out loud, and I telepathically send out to whoever this female voice is. Seaweed is a plant that grows in the salt water in the ocean, and I eat it as a medicine to keep me healthy. And then I didn't miss a beat. I just continued the conversation as if this lady Sasquatch and I had been friends for a long time. And I said, "Do you have any plants that you use as a medicine?" And I wasn't sure I was going to get any kind of an answer. And a moment later, there was a pause, but then there was this little giggle. "Hee, yes." And then she got very enthusiastic, and she said, "Oh yes, chokeweed." And I went, "Chokeweed, chokeweed." And I'm enough of an herbalist that I know my wild plants in North America, and I couldn't think of anything that I would call chokeweed except for a vine that grows in pastures for horses and cows that gives them colic, and I knew that we couldn't eat it, and I doubted that the Sasquatch could either. And so I thought, well, and I said to her, could you send me an image of what you call chokeweed? I might call it something different. And a moment later, and I'm not making this up, a moment later, clear as a bell in my head was this image of this fully mature, 8-foot tall, ready to harvest marijuana plant. Chokeweed! And she was really enthusiastic by now. The funny part about this is, not long after that, I told this story to Kuwani Lapsaritis, the Sasquatch researcher, who simply nods. And he said, "Oh yes, the Sasquatch are great herbalists, and we also knew that they used marijuana for headaches and digestive issues and other things." He said, "I was at a gifting location in where a lady had land with forest on it, and she had a gifting tree, and we left things for the Sasquatch, but one day she had a migraine. And so I went out to the gifting location by myself and explained to the Sasquatch why she wasn't there. And I came back to see if they had taken the gifts and the food that we'd left for them. And here, laying on the stump, was this huge, full-sized colo of marijuana. And the Sasquatch gave me the instructions to have her make a tea out of the herb to cure her headache. That's how we learned that the Sasquatch knew about the medicinal use of pot. And I went, huh, okay then, chokeweed it is. So that's how we came to understand that the Sasquatch enjoy chokeweed probably as much as the population of Earth humans does.
Right now, it's very similar to UFOs and stories that people have when they're in the deep woods. And to me, usually you can tell when they're making, if you do enough interviews of people like that, witnesses to strange events, you can tell pretty soon if they're making it up or they're making it more than it was. But with these, most of these witnesses to Bigfoot, to me, they have been compelling. They have been compelling. You can see the emotion in them. Some wind up crying about this, I'll never forget what this is, and that's very compelling to me. Like UFOs, however, I think the ultimate answer has to be a piece of physical evidence. But for now, for me, the witness testimony is surely something to consider seriously.
They're very smart, very, very smart. And for them, I don't know what it is, they just don't like to be caught on film, okay? So if you do catch one on film, either it was a mistake or it was because they wanted you to see them. You know, you get on YouTube and you see videos posted from all these organizations like, you know, the BRO or whatever, and most of the images that you get from them are blurry. Now, I don't know if that's something that is caused by, if the Bigfoot can do that, I don't know, but 99.9% of the stuff you see on YouTube, all the images are fairly blurry, you know? So it's hard to distinguish if that's really what it is. So that's why so many people are skeptical.
Their artwork in the landscape, their language and glyphs on the ground, all of these are part and parcel of things that we are just now learning to pay attention to and to research more about the variety of Sasquatch clans all over the planet.
We're discovering new creatures, new species, I should say, are a better term. New species every day of creatures we thought were extinct. So there are many areas of the earth that are inaccessible normally to humans, and they're finding new species. I won't say every day, but every year they find new species of, you know, vertebrates and things like that. So a species that has evolved in the deep forest has, in my mind, no problem remaining secret and not revealing itself.
Fossil records confirm giant dinosaurs once roamed the earth. Massive beasts beyond our comprehension. Will science, in its steadfast pursuit of discovery, learning, and understanding, give confirmation to another of mankind's mysteries, and truly shed light on the mythical Sasquatch roaming the earth?
I'm a skeptic, but I keep an open mind, and I am fascinated reading stories of Bigfoot encounters and events.
Is he connected to the UFOs? Maybe that's very possible. Maybe that's why we don't see him. You know, maybe he does get dropped off here. Who knows? But I know he's here, and I suggest for anybody that doesn't believe, just go out and take a look for yourself.
I suspect that's going to happen at some point. It could be tomorrow. It could be next week. It could be a couple of years from now. But there are enough people inspired and looking for it where it's a legitimate subject of research, and I believe it is. Something is going to turn up.
Listen, I'm not here to try to, convince anybody or anything like that about the existence of Bigfoot. I happen to know the truth, however you want to spin that, it's up to you or whatever, but people just, they can't accept it. It's just hard for them to understand that everything they've been taught their whole life is not really what's going on. Can't see the wind, but you know it's there. It's the same thing with Bigfoot. There's going to be a lot of people who are skeptical that will try to hurt your feelings or whatever the case may be, but don't let it. Because the fact of the matter is, you seen that Bigfoot, they didn't. And that's something that's very special, it's very personal, and it's something that I'll never forget as long as I live.
I've always kind of been that kind of person to want to know more, what's around the corner, what's around the bend, what's behind that bush, or what's up that mountain ridge. When you have something that many are interested in, it's a simpler thing to talk about with your stories, and maybe not feeling so alone with some of the things that you experience in life, and sharing them with other people that are into the same thing. It's definitely something that I want to keep exploring more of, and it keeps pulling me back. And I think we'll continue to do that until I can't breathe anymore, until there's no more left. I'll keep going. I'll never stop.
We set up a couple of things in the woods just to see if we see movement. And this place is quiet. There's no animals around for some reason. We seen one hunter all day yesterday, 2 cars all day.
Did you guys pull this way? Or is that where it was?
We sat around a fire all night. We heard a tree pushed over. We heard a rock thrown. Crazy stuff. Smells in the woods with nothing dead around. And that was kind of the spark that ignited the fire in me, and that's why I'm still out here today.
And I think between our beginning study of their language, their artwork, their culture, we're realizing that we're not just dealing with great big hairy hominids out in the forest that are dumb animals. We're dealing with a very, very intelligent, advanced peoples.
We are but the sum of our experiences. Our reality shaped by the perceptions of our interactions with the people, places, and things on our singular path through life. While moments can be shared, realities cannot. And in our effort to grow, we internalize our unique journey, defining us, our beliefs, and who we are. But maybe, just maybe, as we open up and share our personal stories, the ones we dare not tell, for no one would believe, we realize we aren't so different. We aren't so terminally unique. The veil is lifted, and we will march on. Our small part in a large movement, necessary and significant, in generating critical momentum to discover and uncover our destiny of unlocking the secrets of the Sasquatch.